G'day, this is Rex. I had the pleasure of attending a special presentation by one of Australia's Olympic athletes who also happened to be my high school geography teacher, athletics coach and mentor. William Joseph Earle, more commonly known as Bill, was a remarkable Australian athlete known for his impressive performance in the 1964 Tokyo Olympics. Born in Stawell, Victoria, he developed a passion for athletics from a young age, showcasing his talent in various track events. Bill Earle made a significant mark on the national stage, becoming a prominent figure in Australian sports. At the Tokyo Games, he competed in the men's 4x100 relay, a challenging event that requires not only speed, but astute strategy and strength. The Australian team's time was only a mere 1.1 second from the outright winner. His journey from Stawell to the Olympic stage is a testament to his perseverance and determination. Bill Earle's career in teaching has taken him from the Western Suburbs of Melbourne to the UK and Canada and back again. Bill and his family are synonymous with the Stawell Gift, which is Australia's oldest and richest short-distance running race. Bill's grandmother was responsible for providing the gold medal for the winner. It replaced the gift of a goat that was part of the winning prize case. The Footscray Mechanics Institute, established in 1856, had the honour of hosting his recent presentation, which was introduced by Doug Climo, life member of the FMI and very long-term friend of Bill's. Sit back and enjoy a bit of reminiscing.
Yes, this is Mr. William Earle that's going to give you a talk this afternoon. I first met Bill over 60 years ago when he came as a first-year teacher to Sunshine West High School. And he makes no secret of the fact that when he arrived at this Western High School, it was a culture shock for the ex-bush boy. But it didn't take very long for him to fall really in love with the place, the students, and that hasn't changed over the years because he's still president of the Ex-Students and Staff Association after all those years. Now, Bill's had an illustrious sporting career, and also as a teacher he's taught in the UK and in Canada, and of course finished his teaching career as a school principal. So it's with very great pleasure that I introduce to you Mr. William Earle. Bill?
Thank you. There are faces here that I recognise and I can't put names to yet, but I will. Look, I want to talk to you about growing up in Stawell because people in the city often don't learn about the country culture towns that exist and how growing up in a country town is quite different to the city. When we were growing up, we thought the best thing about Stawell was the road out of it, but how silly we were. And I've put some things around here, particularly there's a leather book. The inside cover has a photograph of Stawell from Big Hill, which is where all the mining took place. And in the mining days, there were 50,000 people in the town. Yes, if my mum caught me coming back from Big Hill, I was in big trouble. Not only because of the mines, but because of things that were going on necessarily up there. It was a lover's paradise, Big Hill in Stawell. Anyhow, but the Stawell Gift is a unique event. There's only one other part of the world where there is something similar, and that's in Scotland, and the Powder Hall Gift. And if you go onto the internet now, you can actually watch some of these events taking place. The Gift has had a number of Scottish athletes come out and run at the Gift, the big one being George McNeil that won the Gift. And when he was getting the sash and the medal, he broke out in Scotland the Brave, and he was a wonderful singer, and the whole the Stallites didn't know whether to sing with him or just to clap at the end. But a wonderful, wonderful man. and I named one of my trotters after him, G.G. McNeil. Won one race and sent him a photo, and he was just wrapped with it. Anyhow, I'll go back to my script. If you've got a weekend spare, don't hesitate to hop in the car and drive up to Stawell, because there are a couple of places that you can go to. The Big Hill, don't miss that, because you get a huge view of the Wimmera opening up to you and the Grampians in 20 minutes away by car. It really is a fascinating town, but when I was growing up, it was only Scottish, English, Irish and Welsh. Now it's quite multicultural, with a lot of Indian and Middle Eastern Australians have moved into the town. And it is a fantastic place to live and a fantastic place to grow up in. Jude Bolton, you would probably know, the Swans player. Well, his mum came from Stawell, Rosalie Blake, and she was an outstanding athlete, not only good in ball games, but very, very fast, and won, I think, a Victorian Schoolgirls Championship. But it's also got some interesting places around it, like Kallawatta, Manu, Great Western, and the Wines, John. And the gold medal has been presented for the last 103 years. I'm not sure I can go through these in order, so I might just talk to them and then skim through them. But the gold medal was provided by my grandmother, Ellen Earle. Now, there's a wonderful photo of her somewhere. I'll find it later. And the prize for the gift in the year 1920 was a sash, $40,000. That's it, Doug. I knew he would find it. That's it. And a goat. And she said that, look, the goat's not going to last long, so I'll organise a medal. And you might remember, some of you, Dunklings the Jewellers. And she's in the middle row, third from the right, Ellen Earle, and she was a publican's wife. She organised the gold medal, and on here, when I show you that, we might go through those just later and I can point out particular things that I've talked about. And the gold medal was produced by them and presented for more than 100 years. Bill Howard was the first man to win the Stawell gift twice. This book here, it's a very light read, but it's about the history of the gift, and it talks about the period of the 1930s and 40s when lots of Melbourne underground personalities used to turn up at Stawell because of the amount of money that was being bet in the betting ring. I can remember people in the betting ring, probably around about 30 to 40 bookmakers. And of course, the quick and the dead being the people that slowed up their performance in order to get a lift in their mark. And then when they got the lift in the mark, they would hit the bookmakers and make a lot of money from it. So Bill Howard, and the first one, this bloke over here in the big photo, Jean-Louis Ravalomanitsoa from Madagascar. He was the first man to win the gift from scratch. He was quite a personality because after the heat, he told his coach or his representative, John Tolman, I can't win this, I'm not going to run anymore. And John Tolman, who was a champion distance runner himself at Stawell, he was able to convince Jean-Louis to run in the semi-final. Just run the semi-final and I'll give you a bit more money, because he was his promoter as well. So he ran the semi-final, came back and said, no, that's it, not anymore. But he ran the final. I can't tell you all the details because they're a bit sort of salacious, but he won the final. He's an interesting bloke because he went to Tokyo Olympics and he was run out in the first round. He then went to the Mexico Olympics and made the final. And if he'd have run the same time in the Mexican Olympic final, he would have won a medal, because he ran 12 seconds off scratch, which means he ran, even time is 13 seconds for the 120 metres, and he's run 12 seconds on a grass track, which was rain affected and it's slightly uphill. So he would have been a certainty for a medal at Mexico. But a wonderful personality and was very much loved by the people who met him in Stawell. I just want to say something about the town and the people that work there. They have a team of people that do all of the gardens and parks in Stawell, and they really are quite outstanding. The bloke who's in charge of them is a bloke called Cabbage Rickard. It's called Cabbage because he used to have the fruit and vegetable shop on the main street. But just wonderful. And if you go to Stawell, go to Cato Park, just across the road from Central Park as well, because that's well worth going to. When I was running, there was an athletics apartheid. The amateurs couldn't even mix with the people who ran, and they were called professionals. They ran for money. The amateurs considered them low class because they ran for money. If you were an amateur runner, you weren't allowed to train on the same ground as the professional runners. It was just disgraceful. It was only when some intelligent people got in charge of athletics in this country that they were able to influence the decision makers to go to open athletics, because it was going open throughout the whole world and Australia was dragging the chain on it. But then you got people who ran at Stawell also running in the Olympics and the Commonwealth Games. But it was a pretty bad time for athletes. I had a lot of friends in the professional ranks. I had to make sure that I didn't even jog and warm up with them, because I could have been rubbed out for life. So my involvement also moved over to harness racing, and a lot of my horses I called after athletes like Gigi McNeil, Edmondson in red, who unfortunately tipped me out of the cart one day and then ran into a tree. So that was difficult then to have anything to do with him in a racing sense. Bob Lay, Gigi Holdsworth, both outstanding sprinters. Bob Lay made the semi-finals in Tokyo, running against Bob Hayes, who I think was the fastest man ever, really. And if you want to see evidence of that, go onto the internet and type in the final of the men's 4x100 metres, Tokyo Olympics 1964. The Americans, as they were wont to do, stuffed up the early changes. So Bob Hayes, when he got the baton, was in about 5th or 6th place, well away from the leaders who were Poland and France, and he ran them down. He had been, some people have timed him on the TV to run under 9 seconds for that 100 metres with a flying start. But it's an amazing performance. The Australian team, of which I was lucky to be a member, they broke the world record for the 4x110 yards at Olympic Park at the Australian Championships. There were some forward-thinking officials at the time, which wasn't always the case, who said, look, let's see if we can get a relay team to go to Tokyo. We'll have a relay race after the program's finished, and we'll have one team out of the first 4 and a second team out of 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th. And I finished 4th by about that much. We had some intelligent people on the team, Gary Holdsworth from Victoria, who'd been Australian champion many times. He was one, and he told us, look, the only way we'll get there is to have really fast changes. So don't call anybody back if they go off too fast. So we thought, well, it's worth a try. Off we went. Our first runner, I'll get his name in a minute, our first runner, who's done an enormous job up at Kyneton. He ran the little athletics program up there for 50 years, and recently, you might have seen in the paper, he received a community award for what he'd done with them, Tony Davis. He ran first, I ran second. I didn't run second, I ran third. Bob Lay ran last and Gary Holdsworth ran second. Unfortunately, when I was coming around the bend, Bob Lay took off a little bit too soon. So I didn't call him back as I was instructed, but just got the baton to him before the line. In an interview next day on World of Sport, some of you will remember, some of you won't. World of Sport might have been before your time. Ron Casey interviewed us, and said, just check the last change and watch it, because that's what probably got them a trip to Tokyo. And it was probably true that we just got inside the line. Bob Lay, who was an absolute champion, took off and ran very fast last leg, and off we went. And in Tokyo, in the relays, we weren't aware at the time, but we found out that the Japanese hadn't had much experience in putting on a major world sporting event, because if you do your maths, 1945, end of the war, 1964, it's not all that long. Whilst everything was quite impressive, one of the things that wasn't impressive was when we went to the stadium to see the stadium before the event started, they had all of the line markings marked out in plastic strips about that wide and hammered into the ground with nails on a cinder track, where distance racers ran over lane markings, and so with the hurdles and so forth. So we had to point out that that couldn't go on like that. So they redid them before it started. I've got some photos that I'll show you in a minute. The track itself, when it rained, had puddles all over it because it was the most uneven cinder track and slowest we'd ever run on. The tracks these days are probably anywhere up to 0.4 to 0.5 faster than those cinder tracks of the time. In the first round we qualified for the semi-final, and in the semi-final, and there's a sheet here that shows the times, in the semi-final of the relay, the gamble was certainly justified in sending a sprint relay team, because unfortunately they dropped Tony Davis out of the team, and the politics of Australian athletics at the time meant that they put in somebody from Queensland who was the Australian champion at the time, but he was injured, never ran at all in Tokyo, only in the heat and the semi. He survived, but we didn't. We got run out in the semi-final by a very small amount. That was unfortunate, because in the heat and the semi we were head and head with France all the time in the event, and they won the bronze medal, because that's what can happen in relays. You get your changes fast and you do everything right and you get the benefit. They're the actual times and placings of the 4x1 in Tokyo. Just to mention a couple of other things, my mum and dad went over on the P&O liner, and they stayed on the ship at Yokohama. They hadn't been out of Australia previously. Dad was a bit concerned because the ship took them out on a night out in Manila in the Philippines. When they sat down for their meal, there were semi-clad ladies swinging on swings above them. A different culture. One of them happened to touch Dad on the head, and he said, "Come on, Jean, we're getting out of here." And so that was the end of their meal. But what was amazing for them, because growing up in Stawell and them living in Stawell during the Second World War, when the Japanese army was coming down from the north, Darwin was being bombed, there was a real chance that Australia was going to be invaded. And we went on a tour of Tokyo, which was the most amazing city, and we stopped outside the Empress Palace. We got out and the bloke was talking to us and telling us about the Empress Palace, and I looked around and I thought Mum was very pale. "You all right, Mum?" She said, "Yeah, I just can't believe that I'm standing opposite the Empress Palace when every time I went down the street at Stawell to shop, everybody would be saying, 'Why doesn't the Emperor stop them?' Well, he couldn't stop them because the militarists were in power in Japan, and you didn't dare cross them for any reason at all." But wonderful, wonderful country to see. And we went to Nikko Shrine when it was autumn and all the trees were turning. Just amazing, just amazing. Bob Hayes I've mentioned. Shibuya, which was where the village was, and One of the sad things about the Olympics is they don't let the swimmers go to the opening ceremony, and the opening ceremony is something that nobody should miss, even if they're competing the next day. Of course, some of the athletic officials at the time were difficult, and there were often articles in the paper, clash with officials at Olympic Park or whatever. We were on the bus to go to the opening ceremony, and Dawn Fraser was sitting across the aisle, and one of the officials got on the bus to get all the swimmers off. She got them all off. She looked straight at Dawn and turned around and walked off the bus because she didn't cross Dawn, not publicly anyway. I learned 2 phrases, konnichiwa raka-chan, which is how are you, my baby, in Japanese. Just hello, and so forth. And one of the moments that I had was in the village going into the little shopping centre and to buy some souvenirs. And I heard all this clapping and cheering going on. I turned around and there was the star of the 1936 Games. Who can name him?
Jesse Owens.
Jesse Owens. And he looked and smiled and sort of half waved, kept walking. I went to say hello, but no noise came out. Incredible man. You can see his life story on a movie called Sprint, which is on the internet. It's quite incredible to think that in the 1930s, the racism that he had to put up with in his attempt to go to the Olympic Games was just incredible.
Hitler downtrodden, didn't he?
That's right. That's right. And of course he blew up all of Hitler's theories about supremacy by winning the long jump gold medal, the relay gold medal, the 100 metres gold medal and the 200 metres gold medal. I think he sort of put the nail in Hitler's coffin when he didn't do it in reality. Pardon?
A message for America as well.
Well, I didn't want to say that because, but I agree. So, getting towards the end, and I'll just show you through some of these. We'll have a look at some photos. Now, Doug, you might have to help me here.
Yeah, Cameron, we're passing.
Any questions while we're just waiting?
Was Henry Carr in the team?
Henry Carr.
Yeah, he was a 200 metre.
Yes. He wasn't in 200 that year. I think Paul Drayton won the 200 from the United States. But Henry Carr was a legendary champion.
Yes.
Right. This is Bob Hayes. After the games, he became a football star because he was built like a tank.
Was he?
Well, who was the other one?
Henry Carr became a football player too.
Was he?
Yeah.
Well, he was taller though.
No, Henry Carr was quite short.
Was he?
Yes.
I might be getting him mixed up with someone else. But Henry Carr was one of the top sprinters. Now, I'm going to press this and see what happens. There's Harry Jerome from Canada.
Oh, Harry Jerome, yes.
Got to tell you, when I was teaching in Canada in 1967, thank you, and I think that's one of the reasons why David is sitting here now, I convinced a number of people to go overseas. When I came back from London, I said to Yolanda, get over there and get into the music scene in London, because teaching in London, you see superstars all the time in the street.
Right, sorry.
That's all right. I can ad-lib here for ages. I went to a party one night and Dusty Springfield was there. Did the shop. There we go. Yep. That's the Stawell Gift gold medal. That's the gold medal that's been presented for more than 100 years, is an alternative to the goat. Right. This. That's me in the. You can see the track. See how good the track was? Lots of puddles everywhere.
What was the gold medal made of?
Well, it's got a centre, which is not gold, but it's enamelled with gold. But that's the first round of the 100 metres. First round. This is the gold medalist from the Perth Commonwealth Games from Kenya, Serafino Anteo. I think he was sick that day. This is Hans Schumann of Germany, who finished 4th or 5th in the final. This is Dennis Johnson of Jamaica, the world record holder. And that was the first round, and that's me. The second round was almost the same with me in lane 1, and we were almost in a line, except I finished last, which was unfortunate, but never mind, I couldn't do any better. But you can see the track. It was just an appalling track. Now, how do I make that the next one? What if I press something up here? All right, good. This is an interesting one. This here is Charlie Francis, who became an international coach, and he had a lot of success with his athletes. The problem was they were all on dope. Ben Johnson of Jamaica, a woman called Taylor, who was the sprint champion of the world at the time, and most of them then dropped out. Steroids, so wrong. I remember seeing Ben Johnson at the Commonwealth Games when a friend of mine and I went up and stayed at the Gold Coast and went up to the games, the Commonwealth Games in Brisbane. Ben Johnson came out on the track for his heat and the whole crowd said, good God, he was like a bodybuilder then. And that was the start of his athletic career. A very nice bloke who I think probably got taken advantage of. This gentleman thought that he was a world-class sprinter, but he wasn't, as you can see. I finished second, he won it from the USA, and we ran in the indoor games, the Maple Leaf indoor games, 50 metres. People were supposed to be pure amateurs, not accepting any money at all. Bob Seagren, who was the best pole vaulter in the world, and of course they wanted the pole vault indoors at an athletic meeting. He got a brand new Ford Mustang just for turning up. I got a Violet Crumble bar for turning up. Next one. That's my grandmother. That's that photo there, yeah. Just want to say something about the role of women at that time in history in Australia. Women didn't work. If you were not part of your family and being looked after, fed and clothed and housed, you had to get married. My grandmother on my mother's side, she lost her husband and she had 4 or 5 young children, of which one was not my mum at the time because her second husband was her father. But they had to get married because they didn't work. And it wouldn't have only happened in Stawell. My impression growing up was that women had to stay in their place and that domestic violence was not unheard of. Next one. That's Jesse Owens. Amazing man. And that movie is well worth looking at. And then you got the next one. Oh, that's just the start of the Maple Leaf Indoor Games. That's me. That's Harry Jerome, Menzies Campbell of Great Britain, and I think one of the American sprinters who, Harry Jerome at the time was the world champion, wonderful Canadian runner. Next. Maple Leaf Gardens, that used to be in the city. I mean, it was only a 50-yard dash because it was basically the track was on the ice where they play ice hockey. And just to talk about Canada, the last time the Maple Leafs won the Stanley Cup was in 1967. Yes. And I can remember watching it all on black and white TV while I was correcting assignments from King City Secondary School at night or day or wherever the final was. But I have almost written a letter to the Maple Leafs to see if they have any chance that they'll win it before I cark it again. This is my dad. He was an outstanding footballer. He played for Stawell. He won the Toohey medal for the best and fairest in the Wimmera League. But he went down to Melbourne, played for Melbourne. He wanted to play in the centre. They were playing him on the wing. In the end, he transferred to Essendon. There's Dick, the great Dick Reynolds of Essendon. But there's some brilliant players. Essendon were about middle-run team at the time. but I've got his scrapbook at home and he was pretty good. Alan Martin was playing for the Bulldogs. He was my cousin in Stawell. I was quite fascinated by that. I said to Dad one day, "Can I barrack for the Bulldogs, Dad?" He said, "You be your own man. Will you barrack for whoever you want?" And I barracked basically apart from a period when I was living in Fitzroy and I followed them. But the Bulldogs, get on them. They're doing well.
He played in the Premiership, Alan Martin.
I know. The half-back line was Alan Martin, Ted Whitten and Jim Gallagher.
Exactly.
And Jack Collins gave me a Bulldog Guernsey to take to Tokyo to use in training and stuff. And I didn't have one person come and say, "Gee, that's nice. Can I buy that off you?" Not one. But in Dad's scrapbook, perhaps his mum or whoever it was set his scrapbook up. He often is written up as the best Essendon player for the day. Well, John Coleman, I won't go there, I don't think. Next, no, that's right. No, that's the opening ceremony. Now, if you looked at that photo now, you'd say, "Well, that's last year, surely." But that was 1964, the opening ceremony, and there's the Australian team here, because we were the first team to come in. And when the roar hit you, I thought my cheeks were bouncing above my eyes. I don't know what caused that, but it was a strange experience. Next one. That's all there is?
Yeah.
Good. We've got any questions?
So that 50-metre race, that was in Canada, was it?
That was the eliminations. That was
Where was it?
in Toronto.
In Toronto.
People were invited to come and take part in eliminations, and these were the 5 that were left. Me, this guy here was pretty good, and 3 Canadians, including Charles Francis, and that was the Albion Athletic Club singlet, which Ronnie Harris up here used to wear in our competitions. Did you keep Pete for Albion? No, Peter, no. Because he was a bit of a star over the high jump.
What age would Jesse Owens finish at, Phil?
I would think he was mid-20s when he won the gold medals in Berlin.
In Berlin.
Yeah.
That was his last Olympics, was it? Yeah.
If anybody here's been to Germany, it's a fascinating place. It's particularly fascinating when you think that a whole country can be taken over by a group of gangsters who were brutal in their control of the population. I mean brutal. And I went to Zeppelin-Weiss, which is out of Nuremberg, on another trip, and that's where Hitler held the Nuremberg rallies. 500 people in red and black uniforms, Nazis, with Hitler up the front doing his speeches and screaming and carry on. And when I went there, some of the American NATO troops were playing soccer. There were a number of soccer fields in the middle of it, huge place. They don't pull it down because it's made from reinforced concrete and cost a fortune to pull down and get rid of. But German governments, they have taken the view that it needs to stay there for people to see. Very hard to find because a lot of the Reich bureaus are not all that keen on telling you where it is, but you'll get a whispered, go to the last tram stop and you'll see it in the distance. Zeppelin-Weiss, of course, Nuremberg trials we know about. But I went into East Berlin. The bricks out of Hitler's bunker were used to build the Russian War Memorial in East Berlin. And the wall was still up, and when you look over the wall and you see this green hump, that's where the bunker was, the Reichsführer's bunker. But a fascinating place, and the people were just wonderful. Anything else?
My sister went on the Oriana to Tokyo, probably with your parents, and she was going to see her fiancé who was in the rowing.
I wonder if they went to the same dinner with the women on the swings above them.
No, I don't think so.
But you can imagine what it was like for a couple from the Wimmer in Stawell and all of what they went through. Mum didn't want to talk about it because they were so terrified about the possible invasion that was coming up. And then stories kept coming back to the town about the way in which the Australian troops, were treated in captivity. They were wetting themselves, the town, to see if they were going to be invaded. Anything else?
Saw all the films. You see, at that time in '64, they'd have already seen the films of the prisoners and the way they were treated and all about the railway. And also a lot of those survivors that got back, and there would have been many in the store that would have got home after suffering years of pretty much constant torture.
I didn't hear anything about this growing up in Stawell, but I found out that Stan Illig, Robert Illig, who I went to school with in Stawell, he was captured and in a prisoner of war camp and had appalling experiences. But
different times.
Yeah, different times. But none of that was in any way experienced by the people who went to the Olympic Games in Tokyo. The people were just wonderful. And of course that's often the case when you get dictators in power.
Quickly things can change, doesn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because, 10 years beforehand.
Yep. Well, I mean, the population was captive, and the militarists didn't reflect what the general population wanted to have happen, but they were captive.
Any other significant athletes? You know, you mentioned Jesse Owens before.
Yeah, Jesse Owens. Yeah. Well, I'd certainly believe that Bob Hayes, gout accepted, is the fastest man ever on the face of the earth, even better than Usain Bolt. He was unbelievably fast. I think you'll probably agree if you look up that thing on YouTube of the final of the men's 4x100 metres. He was so far back, there was no way he was going to... And I mean, he's talking about the French and the Polish. The Poles have always had very good sprinters. I think it's the Schnitzels, because the Schnitzels at the Polish club in Albion really would fuel you to run anywhere. But they've always been good sprinters, the Poles.
Ask Raylene Boyle about the Polish runners.
Oh, of course, Irene Sawinska.
Well, that was under Russian rule.
Oh, that's right. She was robbed of a gold medal. It's just, there was systematic doping in a number of countries at the time. I mean, they couldn't hide it because it was so outrageous the times that people were running. I mean, the women were running under 48 seconds for 400 metres. Now, there's nobody in here except Ron Harris who could do that. Well, John Bono in his day. Yes, won't go there. It's still a problem. I think it's still a problem because there is so much money to be made if you are a world champion. See, Gout has been sponsored for $6 million by Adidas. That's a lot of money. A lot of money. He's just turned 17. Look, he is a real prospect. The only thing that worries me is sprinting like this, because if you do that with your hands, you're tightening up your whole arm and lower shoulder. And until I went to the biggest funeral I've ever been to last Tuesday at Dandenong South, sort of a long way away. Roy Boyd, he was the best athletic coach in the country. He specialised in the hurdle events, and he did a lot of work with, who was the woman that won this gold medal?
Yes, marvellous sprinter.
Pardon?
Marvellous.
He did a lot of work with her on a sort of, I'll work with you when I can basis. But Roy Boyd, there was 500-600 people at this funeral. You couldn't move inside the chapel. It was and it was a huge chapel. It was packed with people. Roy Boyd married Bev. Roy was 6'8". Bev was about 5'1", and they had 4 girls, and they spoke at the funeral. But he was an outstanding man. He got an Order of Australia because his athletes got together and said, this man has to get public recognition for what he's done. The Sandringham Athletic Club is now called the Roy Boyd Athletic Centre. And of course, we still meet, that group, at the Elsternwick pub about 4 times a year. And that came from us wanting to recognise his brilliance. He was a very intelligent man. He became a key person in the Ombudsman's department, did a lot of work with various councils, and he was 93. And his vital organs stopped working. So at least it wasn't a nasty situation for him.
Yeah, Bill, did you know Pam Kilgore?
Yes. These women athletes that Australia produced without drugs, they're really legends in the athletic scene. Pam Kilburn, of course, being one of them.
She was a school teacher down at
She was. I thought it was Braybrook on Ballarat Road.
Sunvale, might have been.
Sunvale, that's right, yes, yeah. She was there.
Women in the store, they were
Glad you brought it up. They now have 2 gold medals, one for the women's event and one for the men's event. The Stawell Athletic Club, which could be called conservative because you couldn't just join the athletic club, you had to be nominated by a member to join it. That's changed. They have just announced their president for this year, and it's a woman. The first woman president of the athletic club. I think the athletic club members for many years didn't want much change because they thought they might be letting down the thousands of members that had worked there beforehand. But now there's a lot more getting up to date with community values. So
when did the women join the club? So when they back in there?
I don't know, but I would suspect over the last 15 to 20 years, women have been on the committee. But the Women's Gift started, I think, can you remember Kerry? Kerry's got my eyes, so you know she's my sister. I think it would be at least 20 years that they have had the Women's Gift. Initially it was a lower ranking on the program, but now it's totally equal.
Prize money included?
Prize money exactly the same. $40,000 first prize for the men, $40,000 first prize for the women, plus a gold medallion and the sash. And I told you about the pig, didn't I? It's a wonderful story that they used to give a pig as part of the prize. Anything else?
Sometimes you watch the Olympic minutes and things like that, you know, the old stories of the Olympics. And I was reading a book about a famous boxer from the 1920s called Huey Dwyer. And a guy wrote a book, and his brother was an Olympian, 48 and 52, called Morris Kurota.
Oh, Morris, he was an Australian runner.
Yes. What do you know about him?
Well, I know that he was a very good 400-metre runner.
Yeah.
And around about the 60s, wasn't it? No.
48 and 52.
Oh, that's right. Yes, it was. It was before. Yeah. But he went to the Olympics.
Yeah. Both Olympics.
Yes.
And he went to, sounds like he went to university in the States. The Seton Hall is a Hall of Famer there. So it sounds like, he was running indoors and running all that type of thing.
Yes, I had a line I was just going to talk about, but I think I've lost it, and that's probably permanent. He was an outstanding runner, really outstanding runner.
There's actually a book. His brother wrote a book. I think it's called Up There with the Champions or Up There with the Best or something like that. Yeah.
I might look him up tonight.
Yeah.
On the computer.
I found it on YouTube.
YouTube is an absolute gem in finding anything.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Jesse Owens, when you saw him in Tokyo, like he still a charismatic figure, like
Jesse Owens.
Yeah.
Look, Everywhere he went, a crowd followed. I saw him in the village later on in that week, but, you know, I was just looking for some little things I could pin on or something like that, and I look around and there's Jesse Owens. I mean, it's almost unbelievable. At all Olympics, they invite former champions to the Games, like there will be people invited to the Games in Queensland. That's if they get their act together. They will have particular roles at dinners and stuff like that, which is wonderful. But to see him when I wasn't expecting it, that was...
About how tall?
He was a bit taller than me.
Oh, so he wasn't really...
Not... What do you mean? And no.
I was thinking, you know,
No, he wasn't. He would have been almost 6 foot, but I think probably 5'10", 5'11", but very much faster. Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, your dad's setting you up to do a race with and
I don't know whether I should say this, tell you this one.
I'll lock you up now.
I've been dumped in the middle of it. My father had a friend called Horry Hunt, and the Hunts had sports good outlets in Stawell when the main street, every street in the shop in the main street was full and working. Nowadays in country towns, their main streets are dying because people just go on the computer, buy this, and go to the post office and pick it up. So clothing, and they don't exist in country towns anymore. Horry Hunt was a great friend of Dad's, and I was at uni and I run in the university 100 yards because we were all running 100 yards in those days. And I went home for Easter. I took my gear because there were some other events that I had to go in when I came back. Dad said to me, "Did you bring your athletic gear?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Why?" And he said, "Oh, Horry wants you to run a trial against Bill McCann." Bill McCann won the Stawell gift in the next year, and he was from Doombula, and he was a very good sprinter. In the pros, anybody whose mark was between 8 metres and scratch were their top sprinters. Recently, Mel Durant, who won the gift in 1958, and we were at the pictures on the Friday night in the town hall, upstairs in the dress circle, and in comes all these strangers. I said to someone, "I bet they're here for the gift," and it was Malcolm Durant and his team. He won the gift that year off 8 1/4 metres and really good time. 2 years later he came back and he won the 800 heat and final on the Saturday, and he won the 800 on the Saturday heat. On the Sunday he won the heat and final of the 550, and if you ever want to find out which is the hardest race to run, you run the 550 metres, because they go off like a 400 and you've still got 150 metres to run. It's brutal. He won that, and on the Monday he won the final of the 800. Now, on the Monday, he was re-handicapped back further because he'd already won a final at that meeting. So he had to be re-handicapped back. He won the final of the 800. Now that is probably the best all-round athletic performance by any Australian athlete ever. He's won the Stawell gift, got sick, got a lesser form of cancer and was injured, and comes out and he wins the 2 races on the same program, and he's a sprinter, and we're talking about 550 and 800 metres. A wonderful runner. I called one of my horses Mal Durant, but because it was a filly, I had to call it M-E-L Durant rather than Malcolm Durant. And he had met some of his mates for dinner one night, and he said, "I've got something to tell you." There were about 10 of them. He said, "I've had a racehorse named after me." And they all said, "Oh, isn't that fantastic?" He said, "There's only one problem. It's a filly." And of course they sent him up gutless. But he died last year at a pretty big age, probably close to 90. He'd been in care for some time, And like many people, he had enough and said, look, I just want to go. And so we went. But one of the great runners of the Stawell gift, and he used to go up every year. What they do now is, before the final takes place, any former gift winner who's up there, and they have a list that have notified them that they're going to be there, they get them to line up along the gift track before the final. And some of them have got walking sticks and walking frames, and others are still quite healthy.
Maybe the Olympic marathon, they do that.
Yeah, it's a wonderful idea. The Stawell gift is a remarkable event. Started off as an entertainment and a sporting activity for miners to keep them interested and out of the pubs and off the streets. More than 100 years later, and it's now getting a real revival because of television. You'd be surprised the number of people that watch the gift on Easter Monday. People I didn't even know had any interest in athletics, but they love watching the Stawell gift. And the big thing about it is that it's exciting athletics because it's handicapped. You don't know who's going to win, and of course that with the betting, that's a crucial part about it. But it's so much more exciting. If you go to Olympic Park before, what's his name? Eddie Maguire. It's the head. It's gone very rusty. Now I've forgotten what I was going to say.
Getting back to your trial with your professional run.
Ah, right. Yes, that's right. So we go down to, I said, when are we going to run it? Down at the track. What, on the Stawell gift track when it's prepared and hasn't been run on? Yes. Oh, I don't know about this. Anyhow, I trusted Daddy would never do the wrong thing by me. And so we went down and finally everybody left. Nobody's going to tell anybody about this, are they? No, good. So he said to Horry Hunt, well, where do you want Will to run from? Oh, we'll give him 2 metres. Oh, well, he won't catch him then. Because they didn't, I'll call them pros. They were much more than that. It was a very rich community of athletics, the professional Victorian Athletic League. They believed that the times that amateurs run had been timed by an alarm clock. They didn't think they'd been timed by a stopwatch. The people in amateurs, and some of it was a bit nasty, it was a class thing. They were working class, they were running for money. It's bullshit, that sort of thing. And I can tell you some other stories, but I won't. So anyhow, he runs off his mark 6.5, and I'm on 8.5 on the unused Stawell track that was ready for the racing the next day. Nobody around, but then again, we didn't know if anybody was watching with field glasses because there were always hidden trials going on between runners just to make sure that they had them keyed up ready for the big event at the weekend. So off we go. And I couldn't hear anything, so I eased down a bit. And if you're a sprinter, you know you can't sprint flat out for 100 metres. You certainly can't sprint out flat out for 120 metres. So you've got to cruise for a period of the event. So I eased a bit, and then I heard him coming, so off I went again. And I went through the tape and he went through the tape. Horry said to Dad, that wasn't any good because you see the old tradition, no, he couldn't be running the times he's running. He's an amateur and they time with alarm clocks. Let's go next year, he said. And the next year he won the gift off the same mark, running almost the same time as we ran that night on the unused track with nobody there, illegally. But the Stawell gift is full of stories similar to that. Does that answer it, Ron? I'll get you later.
How did they get paid, the professionals? Where were they making their money?
They were making their money in the prize money for the race, but they were also making, in the days like from 48 to 64, the betting rings, it was bookmakers, was incredible. In Stawell, I remember being taken by my nana round to the gift one year to see John Stoney, who was one of the really quality runners in the pro group. there were 60 bookmakers, and the betting ring was just a hub of activity, money going on, money being picked up. They could earn, you know, I've heard rumours that they could earn 30 or 40,000 from the betting ring at its heyday. But now they're not allowed to bet on people under 18. Now on the Sunday is mainly junior running, little athletics, all that sort of stuff. You've been a very, very good class.
Oh, thank you very much,
No
Bill.
worries.
On behalf of everyone present, I'm sure you enjoyed your talk and very, very informative, and thank you very much.
No worries. No worries.